Hello everybody, I'm Anxiety Offline. Happy New Year. I'm back again today for a quick video. In this one, we're taking a look at some miniature BMX bikes, or AKA finger bikes. Now, what these are super scaled down miniature BMX bikes meant for doing tricks with your fingers. And I'm sure they've been around for quite a long time, but I first remember them becoming popular around the year 2000 when Jakks Pacific released the BXS Road Champ series, and I actually have an unopened one right here. But the other day, I was at a local toy store and I found one of the Tech Deck bikes. So today, we're going to open it up, take a look, and talk about all kinds of miniature BMX bikes. So without further ado, let's take a ride. So this one is pretty cool. It's a Sunday bike, it's purple. I wish they came with more accessories, I must say. When I was taking a look at this one versus this one for the video, this one's 25 years old now, it's kind of crazy. This one back in the day came with extra axles, extra nuts, another set of bars, a thing called a trick stick, and then some extra inserts for the wheels too, just in case the ones they gave you wore out. So just kind of cool how many extra pieces this one came with. But here we are 25 years later in the midst of some really crazy inflation, and here we have the Tech Deck bike, and there's really nothing else with it, just the bike. But that's cool. You can't really adjust much on here anyway. And I assume if you buy one of these, you probably already have a Tech Deck screwdriver, which is the tool you use to adjust the seat. But in this series, you also have a cult deck, another Sunday. You also have two cult decks and a SE Bikes deck. Did I really just call them decks? Oh my. Got this for $11.99 from a local toy store out in Frankenmuth, Michigan. And it looks pretty cool. Definitely can't wait to get into it, so let's go open it up. I know some of these, they make a couple different variations of these Tech Deck bikes, and I've seen them with no pegs, with pegs. I've seen some with like actual brake cables and like brakes, not working brakes obviously, but like a brake accessory that kind of has cords that run all the way to the back. So I've seen a couple different variations. This is the one with just pegs on it, no brakes or anything like that. And I gotta say, the pegs are plastic, but they really aren't the worst thing in the world. There's some pretty dense plastics that I don't know, they feel okay. Unless you're gonna grind some like super crazy rough concrete, you're probably not gonna mess them up too bad. It's got a nice solid metal frame, which I do like. For some reason, there's always a little bit of play in these wheels, I've noticed. When you first get it, it's not as bad, but and I probably can't see on camera, but the wheel just bounces up and down a little bit when you roll it really fast. Not really a big fan of that. It's kind of like you can feel it when you ride, when you actually roll the bike on a surface. Very nitpicky thing, obviously. It also has metal bars, but the fork is plastic, wheels are plastic. So the pedals and the actual like cog itself are plastic, but the cranks are metal, so that's kind of cool. The back wheel is connected to the pedals with a little rubber chain, so they, spin obviously. The back wheel seems to have a little bit of play. I've noticed like some wobbliness when I do spin the tires, but obviously it's nothing terrible. I'm sure it'll spin just fine. One weird thing with Tech Deck bikes I've noticed is the back of the frame is so wide that the back wheel usually has a couple millimeters of play on both sides. I'm not sure why they don't either just make the frame a little bit tighter or just give that back wheel some more space, kind of like within their mold, just kind of add some more plastic to it so it would fit perfectly in the middle. But that's a very nitpicky thing as well. I do think it's weird though they designed it that way because it does have so much play. But as it sits, as it stands, it's a pretty normal Tech Deck bike. I like the color of it a lot. For 12 bucks, not too bad. So one quick thing is I have one of the 25-year-old bikes right here, one of these Jakks Pacific ones versus one of the Tech Deck ones. And you can see off the bat, I'll do a close-up, but you can see off the bat, the geometry is definitely a little bit different. The Jakks Pacific one feels a little bit shorter, even though now that I'm looking at them both, it's really not that much shorter. I'll show you a close-up on camera, but the geometry of the older one feels like it's a little bit shorter. It also feels a little bit taller for some reason. And the one major difference between the two is the bar width, which now I'm looking at it, and it's really not as long as it feels. But the Tech Deck bars are a little bit shorter, and really all that means is that as bar spins are a little bit easier on this bike versus this bike. When you do them on this bike, you really got to make sure you have enough room, you're holding the bike at the right spot, that you can actually catch them, and you don't overspin it. So it's kind of, but then again, it could be a thing of preference. Some people could like longer bars, some people could like shorter bars. Just kind of one of those things. But the geometry definitely feels different. The Tech Deck bike feels longer, whereas the Jakks Pacific one does not feel that long. It's the kind of the angles of the Tech Deck bike are more, it's more angled versus this one. Things are more up and down. Like if you look at the headset, at least, the Tech Deck one's almost on a 45-degree angle, whereas this headset's kind of straight up and down. But that's one thing to mention. The geometry definitely feels different between the two. If you can shell out the money, I'm not sure how much these cost right now. When I got an opened one on eBay, it was like 3 or 4 years ago, and it costed 30 or 40 bucks. So not sure what they cost now, but if you can swing it, it's definitely really fun to mess around with, and they come with a lot of extra parts as well, kind of like I talked about before. These things came with extra axles, extra nuts. It came with 4 pegs on it. Came with extra wheel bearings, which are things that kind of go in the actual wheel to make it fit better on the axle. And then it came with a trick stick, which is kind of a weird thing you kind of put on the bike to make it do tricks. But obviously we do tricks here with our fingers, so we don't use the trick stick. But these things were super, super cool for their time. And I gotta say, even 25 years later, these things are awesome. These ones have metal forks, metal bars, metal pegs, metal cranks. I guess it does have the same setup, whereas the crank is metal, but the pedals and the actual like cog itself are plastic. But it also has metal axles going on in there too, which are threaded. So you can like take these pegs off. You can put nuts on there if you want to. So you can have like no pegs, you can have pegs on one side. You could dress it up really however you wanted. And these things were super fun. They still are. I'm sure people out there modify them and do all kinds of other crazy things with them, but I really enjoy them. I still do. That is the Jakks Pacific ones. But one other thing I want to talk about is upgrading. And when it comes to upgrading, you can actually do a little bit more to the Tech Deck bikes, I feel like. So this here is my modded Tech Deck bike, and I'm going to run you through all the modifications I made to it. So if you want to, you can try some of them at home and see if you can upgrade your bike, your Tech Deck bike, to make it feel, more solid or just kind of more suited towards you. All right, so the first upgrade I made on this bike, and probably the easiest, is I removed the seat. So I just loosened up the screw here, took the seat out, and really all that does is kind of gives you more room when you're doing tail whips to kind of throw the bike around, and you don't have to worry about that seat getting in the way and kind of like messing up your tricks or anything like that. So got rid of the seat, and that was just super easy, removing a screw and taking off the seat, putting the screw back in. Super easy. People do that in real life sometimes. I've seen a couple of BMX riders who ride their bikes without a seat, so it's not the most unrealistic thing in the world. But it does make using this bike a little bit easier, I must say. And that is something you actually couldn't do on these bikes. These bikes have a fixed, seat post that is actually molded in with the frame. So unless you wanted to cut that thing off, you actually couldn't make that modification for these older bikes, which is kind of interesting. Now, the next one I made is I removed these rubber handlebars here. They just come right off. They slip off like I just did there. I removed both of these and actually wrapped these bars in fingerboard grip tape, and they're not perfect. One side's kind of peeling off, but it does feel like, I don't know, it feels different. I kind of really do like how it feels. You can really feel the end of the bar now, but you still kind of have a little padded, padded grippiness kind of in there as well. So very small thing, maybe kind of dumb, but it does look kind of cool. It's a little bit rough, but it's pretty fun. And either way, it was a really small thing I did to this bike to upgrade it. But now, getting into the bigger upgrades, you might notice this one actually has metal pegs on it, and the pegs are from an old Jakks Pacific bike. So I used to have like 10 or 20 of these things. I had a whole bunch of them, and they come with a lot of extra parts. So I was stoked to see when I found my old collection that I also had a little bottle filled with all my extra axles, pegs, and all kinds of things. So I used some of those parts to actually upgrade this one here. So the Tech Deck bikes come stock with there's an axle in here. You can't see it because the pegs are on, but the axle they use it's a hollow metal tube, but it's crimped at both ends. It's just flared out. So I removed both of those and I replaced them with ones from an old Jakks Pacific bike. On the front wheel, it was super, super easy. Didn't need to really make any modifications at all, and it fit perfect. The back wheel was a little bit harder. So the first issue I had was that the hole in the wheel was not big enough. So first I had to go through and drill that out. Then I had to drill out the holes in the frame to make those bigger so I could get the axle all the way through. And I really did not like the play that these things had in the back wheel. So to fix that and to fill that gap, what I did is I took one of those old bearings, they would call it, in the BXS ones, just a plastic tubing that wrapped around their axle, and I just chopped it to the right length I needed to fill that gap. So then when I put it back together, I put that piece on along with the wheels. So then you have no more play in here. It stays in place now. So it's kind of cool. Now it's threaded, so I can take these off and switch them out, or do whatever I want with it. But so that's probably the biggest modification I made on this bike, was just changing out the axles and the pegs to be all metal. And it feels a lot more solid now. The only thing I wish I could really change is the headset is just so loose. I hate that. And it seems that they kind of come that way stock, and I can't figure out a way to kind of fix it. I did try a thing where I put some resin kind of on this top piece up here to try to lock everything in place, but it didn't really seem to help too much. Either way, it's a fun one. It's gotten a lot of sessions and a lot of action, so it's definitely one of those experiments turned well, which is pretty cool. And I failed to mention, but one other very small thing I did was I removed the chain on my modified bike here. The reason being is the chain sometimes would just kind of get in the way. Doing tricks without it are way easier, and going back to realism too, it's not the most unrealistic thing in the world. I've seen BMX riders ride with no chain, so just kind of thought I would do that as well. And I can kind of do tricks and kind of not have that in the way. So I don't know, that's one small thing, just so I remove that chain. So real quick, I want to talk about some of my favorite tricks on these miniature BMX bikes. So I gotta say, my favorite trick on a miniature BMX bike is a simple bar spin. When you do a bar spin, you really got to think about how you're holding the bike, where you're holding the bike, and then you got to think about how you're going to catch it, where you're going to catch the bars. So it's very simple. It's kind of silly, honestly, but it's just a really fun trick I like doing. I'll even just kind of be holding it sometimes, kind of like a fidget spinner, just kind of doing these over and over. And so doing bar spins is super fun. One of my favorite things to do is like a nose pick grind and like a bar spin out. Something about it is just like super satisfying. My next favorite trick is definitely going to be a tail whip. Tail whips are super fun and super easy. All you do is just lift the bike up, and you can do it a number of ways. My favorite way is to actually just kick the bike using your middle finger and catch it when it comes back around. So all you're gonna do is just hold the bike and kick it around one side and catch it with your other finger. It's super easy. It's just one of those super fun, satisfying things. You can do it over gaps. You can do it into grinds, out of grinds, all types of fun things. So you can either bunny hop and kind of kick it around, or you can either bunny hop and kind of use gravity to kind of do one of those. You can do it the other way as well. I forget what the other way is actually properly called. Forgive me there. Someone drop it in the comments, but that's the tail whip. Super easy, super fun trick. And my last favorite trick on a mini BMX bike is definitely going to be a nose pick grind. So like I said before, I love doing a nose pick grind, bar spin out. Something about that is just super satisfying. It looks awesome on camera too. But nose pick grinds are super fun. It's kind of like a nose manual of grinding. You're just gonna bunny hop up and grind on one of your front pegs. And it's kind of cool too, sometimes you kind of even angle the bike frame to kind of show your weight kind of shifting and things like that. It just looks super steezy. It's a fun trick to do tricks in and out of as well, like a bar spin, nose pick grind, tail whip out, or something like that. So unlike fingerboarding, it's a little bit harder to come across companies that make miniature BMX bikes, especially ones who pay attention to the fingerboarding scene. I really want to try one of the new bikes by Tail Whip. I saw you can get them on Amazon. They're a newer company that makes little miniature finger bikes and finger scooters as well. They look super nicely made, and they're made specifically for miniature BMX or mini scootering, or whichever one you get. So that brings us to the end of the first video of 2025. I can't believe it. Thank you so much for joining me today on this ride. This is a really fun video to make. I can't believe it's the first video of 2025. It's really crazy. Thank you for subscribing and for watching. Please drop a comment down below and let me know which finger bike is your favorite. Keep customizing, keep shredding, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks so much for watching. Peace.